Hey, Jeff here with Providence Sound Vision. I am here at Kingsize Soundlabs in Los Angeles, California, with owner and producer Dave Trumfio. Dave and I have been working together for a long time. We've been outfitting and remodeling studios together since the early 2000s. 2003 or 4 we started working together. And we most recently did a complete retrofit of this studio.
Yeah.
Dave, you've got a really interesting story. Started in Chicago, even Chicago house music before, for those that don't know you or those that know you, I'd like to learn more, kind of talk about
Yeah, at this point I would be considered a lifer.
Yeah.
I've been doing this professionally probably since I was 19. Even before that I had a home studio and was doing a lot of demos for local bands, and college punk bands would actually hire me before I was in college to record. Been doing this professionally since 87, 88, working right out of high school. Started being an apprentice at Sea Grape Studios in Chicago. At that time, I was really into industrial, wax tracks, industrial music, coming out of the new wave stuff and getting into samplers and drum machines. And at Sea Grape, they were recording a lot of the burgeoning house music on the Chicago scene. And so I found a home there pretty early on, pretty young age, assisting and then engineering. Pretty much because I knew how to use the sequencers and the drum machines, and at that time there was even early 1040 Atari computer sequencers and stuff like that. But that studio was really funny because it did two types of music, predominantly house music and Midwest death metal.
Cool.
So one day we're plugging in the samplers and roll-ins, and then the next day we get the double bass drum, 12-piece metal drum kit, which was a great learning experience for Phase.
Oh, sure.
We would throw on huge mic setups, and up until that point I was pretty much a 4-track, 8-track guy. Mic in a kit was a kick, snare, and an overhead. So learned about Phase really fast when you got 6 tom mics.
And a lot of turnover because you see you're going from house to
it was literally day to day. Okay, what are we doing tomorrow? Oh, we're recording, Master, which was a big Midwest death metal band. Then after that, Larry Heard's coming in, or Hot Mix 5. That was a big part of the job, was, switching setups and really on a dime. It wasn't really a project studio. It was a commercial studio in the sense every day was something different.
Every studio in the world pretty much has some foot or some hand in electronic music, but in the late 80s in Chicago, that's really was the birthplace of house music.
Yeah, there was so much energy in Chicago around the electronic scene in general with, you have Chicago house, but then you also had wax tracks and the whole kind of burgeoning industrial scene that was around that, with bands like Ministry and Revolting Cocks, and even bands like Front 242, and all these bands kind of coming through, and there was a huge scene around that. And then of course house music. It was the early days. It was a lot harder.
Yeah,
that's what I like to say. We have clients come in and stuff's so much easier now to make a record. Back then, syncing up 24-track, time code, everything was just harder. You didn't have DAWs with linear views and stuff. You had a piece of tape rolling, and somewhere around the counter around here is where you got to get it. It was a very much way more methodical process of working, where now everybody has it basically on their watch.
Yeah, true engineering. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of technical stuff, especially with electronic stuff. And it was so early, late 70s, early 80s. MIDI wasn't even around until the early 80s. So even just the idea of syncing sequencers and stuff, it was the old jalopy days of electronics.
I wonder, was there a music store in Chicago where the same people that kind of developed house music and Al Jorgensen both heard a Roland 303, and they're oh, I want to incorporate this in my music, but they both took that that tool, that device, and kind of...
I actually worked at a music store up in Highland Park called Music Gallery. I was the young whippersnapper with the new wave haircut, and my nickname was New Wave Dave. there.
Oh, yeah.
And anyways, well, I was actually the recording and synth guy there. But, there was that store. We did mostly Korg and Fostex products, but there was a store called Gand Music. Gary Gand owned it. That had a lot of like technology. But I don't think there was any kind of central hub for the scene other than clubs. When I was a teenager, there was a really famous goth club called Medusa's. And Medusa's was famous for like having 3 floors. And the first floor was kind of your industrial, new wave dance kind of stuff. The middle floor was usually like a bunch of like performance art going on. And then the top floor was the house floor.
Okay.
And this was like where, Frankie Knuckles DJ'd there. This is like in conjunction with the warehouse. And the great thing about the Medusa's is it was a juice bar, it was all ages. The average age there was probably 17. So there was a huge scene around the culture of both styles of electronic music.
So what was the first studio you put together?
Yeah, so going and working and learning under Tom and Mike, who were the owners of Sea Grape, they kind of came from more of a prog rock, country rock, like traditional band background. And so I learned a lot from them, I learned about the band, for example, just being around them. And I quickly realized the music I really wanted to record was more the DIY punk rock and even like, I guess at the time, like indie rock, the style of like guitar, DIY style was like just really taking off. And this would be the late 80s. Mm-hmm. Obviously it started like in the earlier 80s with SST and Homestead and stuff like that, but like that was starting to really take, and like a lot of the cool indie labels were just starting to happen, like Merge and Touch and Go was in Chicago, and that was a huge part of the scene. So a lot of the bands I wanted to work with just didn't have the budget to go into, an expensive commercial studio. And Sea Grape was like, I wouldn't say it was the most expensive, but it wasn't the cheap place, Mm-hmm. So, I missed some opportunities. I wanted to record bands that were kind of coming up on the scene and just couldn't afford it. So I kind of went back to the home recording studio. I've always had a home recording studio, but at that time I was out of my parents' house because they finally kicked me out. When I said I wanted to be in the music business, they're like, okay, hotshot, move out.
What did they want you to do?
Oh, anything but. My parents were really supportive to a point until like they realized, oh, this is what the guy's gonna do. They're a little suspect that I could make a living. I wouldn't say I got kicked out, but I was asked to leave. I ended up renting this house on the north side of Chicago with a bunch of friends. Just moved my studio into the basement, and I started recording the indie rock scene. And to this day, like some of my longest friends in the industry I met and worked with there, like John Langford from the Mekons and John Henderson, who had Feel Good All Over records, and ended up working like on early stuff with Liz Phair and the Handsome Family. We started their first record in that basement. Quickly, that started to take a life of its own, my own productions and working with the indie rock bands around town. The people who owned the house we were renting decided to move back, and my hand was forced, and I teamed up with my friend Mike Hagler, and we built the first Kingsize on Western Avenue in Wicker Park. And at that time, Wicker Park was starting to happen. And this would be like 92, 93. The 1890s. The 1990s. Yeah, early 90s. Yeah.
One of those previous centuries.
Yeah.
What was like the early days of Kingsize Chicago like in between when you started it and you moved out here?
Yeah, the 90s in Chicago, it was an exciting time in that city. Like Seattle kind of just exploded. Before that was Boston and then Seattle. It was like, what was the it city? And it's not like us in Chicago ever were like, hey, we want to be the next Seattle. It just kind of happened. Like the energy, the bands, the cost of living. And I have to say, like at that time in Chicago, there were like a lot of great studios, and I think in the indie world, like, you have obviously Steve Albini. At that time, it was before he had electrical. He had a house. He had his whole house was kind of converted to a studio that he lived in. I think they recorded the drums in the basement, and then the attic was his control room, and then everything in between. But, so you had Steve Albini, and you had a place called Idful, which had John McIntyre, Brad Wood, Casey Rice, who was an engineer that worked out of there, Brian Deck. And these are all like engineers that were like doing some great indie records of the time. So the scene was really strong. And then we had Kingsize, and we were doing a lot of kind of more English centric, like I worked with Alternative TV, Stuart Moxham from Young Marl Giants, the Mekons. And the Mekons liked Chicago so much that John and Sally ended up there. They live there to this day.
And they like you so much.
Yeah. I mean, like I met John doing the Alternative TV record with John Henderson from Feel Good All Over, who has Tiny Global Productions now, which is a really great label out of Spain, doing a lot of great. And he just put out the John McKay, the original guitar player in Susie and the Banshees.
Oh, okay.
Like he's had a record since the early 80s that never came out. So John just put that out. John Henderson just has a knack for all that kind of like, I would say legacy, rough trade, early post-punk stuff. Like he's really got a foot in there. And that's how I met John from the Mekons, was working on an Alternative TV record. We were mixing a record together. So, for John Henderson. But, yeah, so like a lot of the early stuff was kind of spawned out of my relationship with John Henderson and his label Feel Good All Over. And that kind of turned into, all the other stuff happening in Chicago. And, I got to work with like early Palace Brothers, Will Oldham, did a bunch of stuff with Drag City. I just felt like I was going from project to project all through the 90s. And somewhere along the way, I started, I always played in bands. But my brother and I decided to start a band that was just like guilty pleasure new wave band. We thought it was a new wave band, but it really was just an indie rock band that uses synths.
Yeah.
It's called Pulsars. And somewhere along the way, like the bidding wars started happening with all the bands from Chicago because we were Chicago was the it place. So kind of spun that into a deal. And so a good chunk of the mid 90s, I was busy with Pulsars. And on my time off, I'd be producing records. And I did some great records, really records that I'm proud of during that time that kind of like launched my career. I ended up working pretty early with Wilco, this band, The Anniversary, one of my favorite records I made during that era. And they were on Heroes and Villains, which was through Vagrant Records, a band called Kofax, early Nico Case records. Even like right towards the end of Kingsize Chicago, I worked with My Morning Jacket, Jim James, at Dawn. My Morning Jacket, they recorded it in their silo on a farm.
Wow.
To a 1-inch 16 track. The label at the time, Darla, was like getting ready to, wanted to put it out, and they just couldn't get the mix right and the mastering. A friend of mine was kind of involved on the technical side. I was recording his bands when he was younger, and he was like, hey, like, I think Jim needs to come up to Chicago and you need to finish this record we started. So he came up and we transferred everything to Pro Tools. This is pretty early, and not everybody had Pro Tools back then. So we ended up doing a bunch of extra production at Kingsize and mixing it, and boom, at Dawn, I got to launch that band's career,
Yeah.
And then that was like right when I was in transition to coming to LA. And I hit LA with OK Go, band I was working with in Chicago, and that was kind of happened when I moved here. They got a deal with Capitol, and I was off and running in LA. My trajectory as a studio owner, it always came down to like me having a studio, me having myself, my projects, being able to pick and choose the projects I wanted to do because I had my own place. And then, realizing like, like most of the music I really, really like aren't the major label records. They're cool, weird indie labels doing the really interesting stuff. And a lot of times, with or without a studio, those budgets are inherently lower. And when I first moved to LA, I kind of came out here thinking I would never build a studio. I'm going to a legendary city with legendary studios. And, it's funny, my wife Rana, I moved out when we were going out. She was my girlfriend at the time. And she's from Chicago as well. But she was like, I don't know if I want to go back to Chicago. And at the time, she was working a lot in like video, makeup, and repping video directors and stuff. She's like, my work's here, like, by the way, there's a lot of music that's done in LA too. And I'm like, oh, you're right. So when I came here, I just never imagined I was going to like kind of use the model I had in Chicago here in LA, because there's just so many studios. So I moved out here with, my racks of like my favorite outboard gear and a Pro Tools rig. After a few indie level projects here, like, $25,000 budgets, $20,000 budgets, which I guess like maybe young people seeing this nowadays go, wow, that's a lot of money, Back then that was nothing to go into a real studio, work with a real team of producers and engineers, So like I'd make a record and literally spend 6 weeks, and at the end of the day maybe make $500. After paying for the studios, the overdub room, and let alone all the hours I put into the project. So I quickly, for every major label project I was working on 8 indie projects. So I turned to Rana, and at this time we got engaged, and we were starting a life here in LA, and I'm like, I think I'm building a studio.
My name is Rana Bronstein Trumfio, Dave Trumfio's wife. We started Kingsize Soundlabs together 25 years ago. We met in Chicago. I'm a musician, and we did some shows together, and it was a lot of fun. When we got married, I said, hey, you've got to come to LA, because I was living here already. He said, well, I'll have to find a studio. And I said, okay, let's find you a studio. So here we are.
This is the first room I built here in LA. It was about a year after being here, and a year after working at all the great studios and some not so great studios. But I went to Capitol, I went to Sunset, the legendary rooms, realizing like, wow, like these are great rooms. They cost a lot, and I feel more comfortable in my own space. I felt like, I kind of like started thinking like, wow, I really wish I had Kingsize out here. And that's what drove me to like build Kingsize Los Angeles.
Was your time with the Pulsars, did that have anything to do with moving to LA, or was it?
No, the funny thing is like we did do the major label deal, and which I have to say, for hindsight's 2020, a lot of people were like, are you upset that you went with a major label instead of a cool indie? I've been asked that a lot, and like I never have regrets about it. It set me up. I bought a bunch of gear. Mm-hmm. We got a good deal. We got some money up front, some signing bonus. Bought one of the first Pro Tools rigs in Chicago was directly related to that deal mm-hmm. for us. And it kind of set me up for this side of what I did in my career.
And gave you some insight to that part of the business.
Yeah, and like right from day one of signing that deal, they were like, why don't you move to LA? Why don't you move to LA? And at the time, I wouldn't even think of it. I was just like, why would I do that? Like Chicago's amazing, the energy, like the scene. It was so much part of what I did and part of me, And I just didn't see the point of moving to LA at that point. I really moved here to be with Rana. As she pointed out, there is music here, so.
and Rana manages this business with you.
Yeah.
She books the studio.
Yeah.
If anybody reaches out to Kingsize via the website, she's going to be the one.
Yeah, you're gonna speak with Rana, and she'll set you up.
Yeah.
But she didn't want to be in the studio business. I had to kind of like go, hey, honey, we're building a studio, and she was like, okay, if you think that's what you should do. And then 25 years later, here we are.
Yeah. And so OK Go, was that your first hit, your first success in LA?
In LA, yeah. That record kind of really threw me into the LA thing, Like it was a priority record for Capitol, and it taught me a lot of what I liked about the record industry and what I don't like about the record industry. And part of it was, spending a lot of money at big studios, legendary studios, when like it could have easily been done in this room. In fact, the song Get Over It was started in this room.
Yeah.
The stomps and claps on that song were all in that room. And
Yeah.
the hub of that track was recorded here.
Yeah.
Coming from my kind of more DIY punk rock background in Chicago, maybe in Chicago, project studios were a little more the thing, the norm. Albini for sure is a pioneer of the project studio.
Yeah.
Like he had his home, his house, and then built Electrical. Electrical is an amazing facility and it's built very much like a commercial facility. But Albini did what he wanted there. He was kind of one of the pioneers of what I would say the producer studio.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was like right there at the beginning with all that stuff, and having a studio as my instrument was key to developing where I am in my career today. So like in LA, not that many people had project studios. I felt like there were a lot of garage studios being run as commercial studios.
Right.
And obviously the legendary studios. And the in-between studios were still being run as commercial studios. Mm-hmm. So the idea of being a producer and having your own studio was somewhat unique when I hit town. And in the early days of LA, like that was great. And it really helped me be able to make a living. The budgets were anywhere from 10,000, sometimes 5,000 on up to like 150,000, depending on what it is. I mean, sometimes more if it's a big major label thing. But I would say the average cost of a record for a month and a half of work was around 15 to 25,000. And, having my own studio, like I would take the fund and pay to run my studio and pay myself and my assistant, and it all worked out, right? And at the end, the record company got a finished record and the band artist got a finished record. And that worked for a long time, And I think to this day, it's still the model. It's now you don't necessarily get the money up front as much as you used to, and there's a lot of sharing in back end and publishing and songwriting. Like nowadays, I feel like the game is like every songwriter needs to have their studio, and I feel like everybody right now, like at this time, the history of recording studios, and we've talked about it, everybody has a studio.
Yeah,
it's definitely an interesting time to be running a commercial room because, this kind of turned into my private studio. I mean, it was my private studio, and then it turned into a commercial studio when I when I bought my house with a recording studio, so I could, the very simple fact I needed to be around my kids more. So I ended up working at my home studio, which, it's a great studio. I work there to this day. But that's when this Kingsize LA became open to other people. It's interesting. There's kind of a 5-year cycle, I feel. I don't know if you ever noticed this in the industry, but I feel like there's like especially, I mean, I'm sure it's in all industries, but in the recording world, it seems like a 5-year cycle.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're right now at the 5-year cycle. Sometimes it doesn't land exactly on the 5, sometimes 6, and sometimes 7. But like COVID really changed the landscape of the studio world, I feel. And right now we're really realizing what the new model is.
What is that? What is that to you?
To me, it really solidified home studios. We tried to open as soon as we could, and we had all the protocols. We did okay. We made it through COVID. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of people got used to working at home. Mm-hmm. And, studio players, especially drummers, but like most studio players had to figure out ways to get their home studios to a point where they could do what they do. And it kind of like threw everything into a tailspin as far as like people coming in and camping out in a studio. And I feel like over the last 5 years, there's been a lot of like, well, we're going to go into Kingsize, or we're going to go into Sunset or some studio, and we're going to cut basic tracks. And what used to be like a 4 to 6 week session is now whittled down to 1 day to 5 days. Yeah. 5 days a week for basic tracks is kind of a luxury, it felt. So I felt like that model was even starting to happen before COVID. And that's great. I think more people should be recording, and everybody is. And I heard a statistic like the amount of music being released today, or yesterday, let's say Friday. Friday's the release day. The amount of music being released yesterday is equal to the whole year of 1989 with all labels
Wow.
in one day.
Wow.
So put that in perspective. Like, you know, music isn't going away. It's like, it's everywhere. Everybody's making music. Everybody's releasing music. So the whole industry is adapting to that. And, you know, what used to be the power of digital and being DIY and, you know, the Wild West days of like streaming and stuff, I feel like that's all been locked down now. And we're back to gatekeepers, and we're starting to get back to labels kind of holding the rein, whether we like it or not. They can front load streams, they can get the playlists going. You know, I hate to say it, but it never went away. It kind of went away for a second, but the pay to play thing is real.
Yeah.
And it's becoming back to where it's called an industry. You know? So I feel like right now there's more and more people realizing like, you know what? I can't be in my apartment. I can't be at home in my extra bedroom or even my garage and having my family and my clients there. So I feel like, especially for, it's funny, it kind of goes back to the project. It's going back to artists wanting to have the experience, not engineer themselves. Because, you know, I mean, I think there was a period in the last 5 years where everybody's learning how to do it themselves, and YouTube videos and all this stuff, and how do you get the best vocal sound and all this stuff, and recording drums at home and all that, where I think, you know, once you kind of reach a point where you do get some kind of success and do get on some kind of label situation, whether it's a label, you know, I know a lot of artists are starting to get like good publishing management contracts, like these hybrid deals that are happening, where, you know, there's a lot of different new models. It's not always just a record company, it's management companies, and, you know, but them like going, hey, we want to put, the artist wants to be in a studio for a month. The artist wants to be in a studio for 3 months. And instead of all the stuff in this room, buying it and putting it into their own studio, why not go to a studio that's already time-proven, built, ready to roll?
Yeah.
And so, you know,
You just worry about your vocal performance.
yeah, and you know, and like, you know, instead of like, I mean, some people like to engineer their own vocals. That's part of being an artist. Every artist, every record's different, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, the model of like, okay, there's an engineer, there's a producer, there's a studio, and there's an artist. And the artist can be the artist in the traditional sense. I think even the artists that are very hands-on and very know how to work all this stuff, you know, appreciate being able to be on the other side of the glass.
Yeah.
I know myself as an artist, that's a big thing, you know.
Having sold gear through the COVID years,
Yeah.
it was some of the busiest time we ever had.
Yeah.
Because so many people were trying to outfit their studios, work from home,
Yeah.
couldn't come to a place like this because of the
Yeah.
laws and the distancing and everything. But, you know, there are a lot of people like you that are making a living at producing records, engineering records, mixing, mastering, where they see that same business model that you had, like own the studio.
Yeah.
And then that way you get all the budget and you can
Yeah,
have it be a part of your
course.
business. But the cycle you mentioned, the 5-year cycle, I've been now working on this side since 2003, and I've seen people with that mentality, okay, well, I can build a studio at home, I'm gonna be with my kids, I have babies now or whatever, but then like when those babies are like 6 and they're like banging on the door when you're in the middle of a session, or you know, Dad, then you're like, okay, I need to go to work, right?
Yeah. No. Around that time, we actually, as Kingsize, realized, oh, there's more and more clients with home studios. And so we were pretty early on like the producer room model. So with Kingsize, we have Studio A, partners in 64 Sound, partners in Gold Diggers. We've had various rooms within Kingsize, C room, B room.
And this is the rock block.
The rock block, right. Yeah, so right next to us is the Studio B, which in 2008, Rob Schnaff came and did. It used to be Manny Nieto's studio, and then we took it, turned it into Studio B. And then, you know, Rob came in to do a project and never left. So it quickly became his studio.
Since 2008?
Yeah, 2000, by 2009, he was like in, he kind of left his gear and then like, I'm coming back, Yeah. So that's Mant next door, which used to be Studio B.
Cue Rob, he's like the sitcom neighbor who's going to come through the door.
Absolutely classic. We saw the need for what I would call an audio office. So we ended up taking that building at the end of the block was a sweatshop. And then one day we showed up and like everything was gone, and I called up the landlord at the time. I was like, hey, these people are gone. He's like, oh, what? I'm like, I'll take it if you want to like rent it to me. And they're like, oh yeah, it's yours, go ahead. So we struck a deal and we ended up building 5 producer rooms in that building. And it kind of got us going on this thing where we would provide these rooms. And so this is the rock block. And you got Aaron Espinosa, so the ship is next to us. And he's been here since day one. So I ran into Manny Nieto at Spaceland and he told me about this space.
Okay.
And this is like right around when I was like, I think I have to build a studio. And the timing was like perfect. So the producer rooms started around that time, 2004, 2005. Since then, we've kind of really taken that model and expanded it. I think we're up around 41, 42 producer rooms around this area. And we have a building up in Burbank. Gold Diggers is the model of Gold Diggers. It's a commercial studio. All rooms are day-to-day, except we flip rooms and we do lockouts, and it's starting to kind of be a combo, Yeah, the idea of the facility and like having these producer rooms, resident, month-to-month clients that rent empty shells, bring their own gear. It's not like we're outfitting these rooms. It's not like we have 40 rooms that we bought all the gear in. Although some of it we have gear in.
but
Jeff, it's been a problem. A blessing and a curse. No, I mean, but you're right. Like the kids and family life and separating work and family is like a really important thing. And I know because I've had a home studio since my kids were little. And I felt like I was like the mad professor for many years where it'd be like, Dad's in the laboratory, don't go in there, like there was definitely that vibe going on,
my kids would definitely just start pulling patch cables.
Oh, knobs! Whoa, woo,
Yeah. A lot of your clients who are renting those spaces are some of the biggest producer engineers of today and the past few decades. Those people too, like they're using that space as their audio office.
Yep.
And when it's appropriate, they track here or they go to Sunset Sound or what have you.
Yeah.
But they have that base camp that's set up for them.
Yeah.
It's affordable, it's a tuned, soundproof space. I see that as really like the future of the industry.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see it replicated a lot more. It's becoming very common, I feel, like in the modern world of recording. And obviously everybody lives within the same ecosystem. I mean, if I have the budget, I love going to the big rooms. Like working in Capitol is amazing. But having your instrument, having your room as a producer, or engineer, a mixer, composer. I mean, composers, we ran to a lot of composers over the years, and that's their instrument. The studio is their instrument. It's not just their sample library and keyboard. It's the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I learned it was my instrument. I mean, I started in this whole thing with a band and being a musician, and to this day still am a musician, but I kind of by osmosis became the studio guy because I was the guy recording the demos, and it's the reason I play bass is because nobody else wanted to play bass, so I play bass. Being the recording guy, all this stuff is like, it's like your guitar and your amps and your keyboards, and if you're a musician. So this is all like my instrument on this side of the glass,
I get where you're coming from. I've been playing drums since I was a kid, 8 years old, and for the most part I can do whatever I want to do on drums. And I've been playing the studio, since I was 13, 14. And I go through periods in my life where I'm like, I want to get better at piano, or I want to get better at guitar, and I'll spend a couple weeks, really trying to like get better at one of those instruments, and then realizing, well, I could be better in the studio. I could be better at drums. Like, why dilute myself and be like okay at a handful of things? I'd rather be better at like.
That's funny, because people ask me like, because I do a lot of production work, and I'll play keyboards, and I'll play like enough to like do a part on a record. and get a credit. So I've come across people who are like, man, you play so many instruments. And I'm like, no, I just kind of bullshit on all of them. I'm kind of just a really good bullshitter. Like I use the studio as an instrument. I mean, they don't know that I'm playing the keyboard with like 2 hands for like 3 notes, you know? Like I could easily, with a proper, you know, technique, I could do with 1 hand, you know? But you know, but that's part of just being a creative person and like doing whatever it takes to get the job done, right? A lot of times, funny, I saw a thread yesterday about, you know, technique and how a lot of musicians have become famous, but they don't really know how to play like professionally. And like, it isn't about, to me, it's never about being a professional in anything. It's just being creative and doing the best you can and using technology to your advantage, which, you know, being in the studio world, and especially coming up since the 80s, I've pretty much, you know, along with a lot of other lifers, had a front row seat to see like, wow, like the fact that we could have this console, which is modeled off the 4000, which, you know, the original 4000s were like 3 times the size and, you know, has a closet of power supplies.
For $1 million, yeah.
Way unattainable. The fact that we're in this day and age where this is actually accessible to so many people. You know, I wouldn't say it's the cheapest thing or anything, but price-wise, budget-wise, but if you're serious about it, it's within grasp. You know, it's a nice car where it used to be a nice house.
Yeah. Or more. Yeah. Coming to Kingsize, you know, you guys there's 10 snare drums, there's 60, 70 guitar pedals, there's a variety of amps and a Hammond and a piano. And I think a lot of times people, they look at a studio and that just becomes kind of the wallpaper, you know, you see, they take it for granted that all that is there, because in a more traditional commercial studio or, you know, in earlier decades, if you wanted 10 snare drums, you'd have to rent them from Drum Doctor, and he would charge a lot of money to deliver them and tune them. And if you wanted backline, it'd be $1,200 for a cartage company to bring a semi-truck. And all these costs really add up. And here, it's just here. It's kind of, you don't charge more for it. It's included with the room.
Yeah. I mean, I just kind of took that for granted since, like, you know, even C Grape, you know, we had instruments. We had, you know, we obviously had the Hammond, the piano, but we had a drum kit. There were guitar amps there. There weren't a wall of guitars, and that's going back into the 80s. So like, I was always used to a studio providing a decent accoutrement of like kit, you know, like instruments. And then when I, you know, started going to like Sunset and Capitol and the big rooms around town, it was pretty basic. You know, they give you like an amazing sounding room, amazing microphones, amazing console, a nice array of outboard gear, but not crazy amount of outboard gear in some of those rooms. When you really look what comes with the room, it's like, oh, 21176 is, you know, the greatest hits. They'll have it. But, you know, you kind of have to bring the party, right? You got to bring in the drums, you got to bring in the amps, you got to bring in everything. And like you said, when I started this studio, it was my instrument. I had all my stuff here. And to this day, like, you know, it's not all my stuff because I got stuff at my home studio, but like, I like to say, you can fly to LA and with like a suitcase of clothes and make a record. You know, there's enough stuff here. And early 2000s, that wasn't the norm. It just wasn't the norm.
Yeah.
You know, and so I like to think like, you know, Kingsize LA, this room, kind of was one of the first project studios available to the public when we started renting it to the public with all the gear, you know.
Yeah.
Going back to the OK Go record, you know, I mean, there were times I was signing an invoice for $9,000 a day. Between the drums, the guitars, the, you know, the rented Fairchild that was legendary and had the Magic Mojo the label wanted there, you know, the whole kit and caboodle, you know, was super expensive. And honestly, a world I just wasn't used to.
Yeah. And I mean, that's another value that you bring that someone might take for granted with looking at Kingsize, like that you're helping, you're bringing value, you're bringing efficiency.
People really do their research and they go to our website, and our website is great because it has everything, all the gear that we have, all the mics. You know, the question I usually get is this all available in the price? And I'm like, yeah, it is. I actually really love it when people play our instruments. I have a 68 Fender Mustang. I'm happy when people play it because I haven't been playing it. The guy from Pond, he was so excited because he had the same guitar. He's like, oh my God, my guitar is here at Kingsize. Can I play it? And I'm like, please play it.
Even with our other rooms, like 64 Sound, crazy outfitted room. I mean, Kurt Anderson, a good friend of ours who's, you know, our silent partner in the room, he has a bunch of his gear there, and Pierre, and then us. I mean, that's an insanely kitted room. Same with when we opened Gold Diggers. I was like, this is gonna be a commercial facility, but it needs to be run like a project studio. Like, people need to show up and like, here's a menu of stuff that will be set up in the room for you. And this room is kind of like the prototype to any other room I've ever done here in Los Angeles.
In 2004-ish, I sold you the Neve 8068 that lived here for a long time.
Yeah.
One of the obviously most legendary, famous recording consoles of all time. Last year, you made a decision to sell the 8068. It's now has its new home at Electric Lady in New York. And we put in the SSL Origin and also did a full sort of re-evaluation of all your outboard gear.
Yeah.
You had a lot of really cool boutique and vintage outboard gear.
Yeah.
That sounded amazing, looked amazing. You loved it. Was in your arsenal of tools.
It's my personal stuff.
Yeah, it was your personal stuff. But in the conversations we had it was maybe a little too esoteric. People didn't know what it was.
Right.
And it wasn't helping to book the room, right? Like, you wanted to have a greatest hits of CL1B, 1176s. Like, you wanted just to have something that someone would look at your gear list and it's like a no-brainer. They have everything I need.
Right.
Where some of the more esoteric stuff was like, oh, that might be cool, or I don't know what that is. And what was your approach there?
Going back to Gold Diggers and kind of thinking about what people really want in the modern age, I call it the greatest hits. You know, there's certain gear that just, it's the greatest hits. And it's what young engineers know because maybe they've been looking at the plugins on their DAW, like in their bedroom for the last 10 years, you know, and they finally get into the proper studio and they're like, oh, I know an 1176, I know an LA2A, I know a Tube Tech. You know, I just wanted to kind of retool the outboard away from some of the stuff that honestly kind of scared people. They just didn't know what it was, you know, even though, I mean, I'm a huge fan. I'm going to mention some brands that I think are amazing boutique companies, but like Inward Connections, for example. I had those 820, the 820 EQs and the 820 compressors. Like, in one rack, I had 2 LA2As and 2 Pool Techs, like on steroids. Most people they didn't understand what it was. I'm like, well, these are 2 LA2As and these are 2 Pool Techs, but they kind of have their own thing, and they're even like I think a little better, you know, you know, to my ear, they kind of, I mean, I love Steve's circuits. I can't count the number of times I was in here on the first day of a session with a team and basically being like, oh yeah, like, check out these are amazing. And then, you know, they're like, oh yeah, but I'll use the LA2A reissue, you know? And the LA2A reissue is great. It's great. Check this out if you like that, you know?
Yeah.
You know?
It's got the 300 volt tube power supply.
Yeah,
it's
no, I mean,
overbuilt,
I mean, it's amazing. Just people just weren't that familiar with it, or they just didn't know what it was. And it just sat unused for most sessions, you know? And, you know, a lot of our in-house engineers would learn the gear that I loved and be like, oh my God, it's amazing. I use it on every session. But then, you know, an outside third-party engineer or producer comes in, they want to use what they know. They want to use the GML. They want to use the 33609. They want an LA2A. They want an 1176. The Smart C2, that is starting to become classic. People are starting to know what that is, but it's an SSL compressor, right? With like some more adjustability.
Alan Smart was at SSL.
Yeah.
He developed that compressor for them. Yeah.
I mean, I love the crush button, you know, the whole thing, you know,
Yeah.
those the things. you know. And even like SBL, I know we were talking yesterday about SBL. Everybody's starting to love SBL, like, because SBL like does stuff that you don't know what the hell they're doing, but it's great.
Yeah.
Like the transient designer, what the hell is that thing?
Yeah.
Like people are like, what is it, a compressor or an EQ? I'm like, I don't know what it is, but I like it. Yeah, it's some kind of like magic, you know, that they do. So I think like when we made a decision to like kind of revamp the outboard, I wanted to go greatest hits. We opted to move away from our Shadow Hills mastering compressor, which I loved, to go with something a little more versatile like the Mercury 666s that can do that and so much more. And they're individual units. They are strapped in mono. It can be mono or stereo. Right? There's certain pieces of gear that you just run through and it just sounds better.
Yeah.
I would say the Mercury 666, definitely put your 2-bus through that, print every overdub through it, whether you're compressing or not.
Yeah.
Run it through there. You know? And I remember going back to the Neve. That was my dream console, you know, and I love that console. I still love that console. That's a console that like you just run stuff through it and it sounds great. But I do believe the same thing. Depends on who you talk to, but they'll go, well, it's the transformers and it's the signal flow between the fader and the output. But I mean, at the end, we poured a lot of money into that console, and those consoles are like vintage Ferraris. You take your vintage Ferrari out for a weekend drive and it's in the shop on Monday.
Yeah.
You know? And so as a commercial facility that doesn't have a full-time tech staff, we're very blue-collar working class audio. That's the way we run this studio, you know? We spent a lot of money on tech, and we dipped it several times. We recapped it several times. You know, we poured a lot of money into that console, and I have to say, it was 100% maybe the first few days we would do something like a big teardown on it, and within a couple months, little things start cropping up.
Yeah.
You know, a console, especially an old vintage console, if you don't run it like what it's fully capable of all the time, it atrophies.
Yeah.
So, you know, like the aux sends, people weren't running mixes through it. They were just using it as a front end. The aux sends and running headphone mixes and actually mixing records on the console happened less and less since we bought it. Things were moving into the box. People are just stemming out through the console, maybe everything at Unity, and not really running the board the way it was run in 1975. I mean, frankly, and I mean, it's no secret, but all those old Neves of that era, the switches, they're finally needing to be fully reswitched. So when we put a pencil to it, it was like, it's over $100,000 in switching. And the fact that they don't really make the parts anymore, so you either have to find a treasure trove of parts or you gotta have it 3D printed and modified for a new switch. I love the console. You know, I swore I would drive a Honda Civic the rest of my life if I could just own an 8068. That's my Ferrari, you know. But I think after 20 years and we gave it a good run, it was time to kind of move over to a more cost-effective solution.
Yeah.
And that's where like we had very long conversations about like, A, am I crazy for selling this console? I mean, we had a lot of people looking at it, and it ended up going to Electric Lady. And thank God it went to Electric Lady, because, you know, Electric Lady is legendary. They have the budget to re-switch it and get it back up online. And, you
Full-time tech.
Full-time tech. And, you know, it just needs, those consoles, they're not the DIY. I mean, people are DIY with them, I'm sure, but I'm just not a tech.
Yeah.
Like, I've never been a tech. I mean, you know, the first job I had at Seagrape, other than engineering, was to fix a bunch of cables. And I went in there and started soldering some cables, and my boss came in and said, "You're gonna be on tape dupes." So, like, I use the gear, but I cannot fix the gear. I mean, I could check a fuse. I got to a point where on the JH24, I could, like, you know, obviously calibrate, but I could like change the hat capacitors on the power supply if they went down mid-session. But it wasn't pretty, you know? So I'm glad it went to a real studio, a legendary studio, and I'm glad they're doing what it takes to bring that back to its full glory. I mean, it was working here. I mean, we used it as a front end.
Yeah.
Just,
you know, that's what you said. You said most of the sessions were going microphone into the mic pre's, direct out of the mic pre's to Pro Tools.
Right. So like we have that now.
Yeah.
Like we have 1084s.
Yeah.
We have 1073s. We have everything we had.
Yeah.
When we had the 8068, we just don't have the big table.
So you
called an 8068.
So you have like 18 channels of Neve.
Yeah, and we have this germanium, which is very Neve.
The early Neve.
Yeah. So of course we have 32 channels of SSL too.
Right.
This new mic pre on this console, it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
When I saw this and you kind of explained to me what this console was, I was like, I think that's an SSL I can own.
Yeah.
That's an SSL I can work with. That's an SSL I can put in my room.
Yeah.
And it's going to work. And the routing as a centerpiece, 100%. This is like the solution we were looking for. I have other consoles at the different rooms, but the routing capabilities on this board are the best, I feel.
Yeah.
You know, the 16 bus is great. And then the fact that we have the API EQs and the Neves and, you know, other BAEs. And the fact that we can do the tilty EQs and then run it through the console and sculpt with the SSL EQ and print that live. It's the best of both worlds, you know, to me. And like I said, the mic pre, you know, I have the Neves in here. We have the Wally Hyder 312, but then we have the SSL pre, which can be run super clean or with the drive button dirty.
Yeah.
Or what they would call, you know, like a little saturated. I wouldn't say it's super dirty or anything, but it definitely has more teeth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And there's been a couple times I've been in the room where we kind of load sessions, like there might be a daytime session, a nighttime session, and I've had to snuck in and do drums, you know, on like maybe an evening session where I'm not going to touch the setup of the outboard pre's being used for the daytime session. So, you know, I cut drums using the SSL pre's on a couple projects, and they were amazing. I didn't miss it not being an API or a Neve. You know, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Having only worked on SSL consoles as mixing consoles, not tracking consoles, I was pleasantly surprised as a tracking console too.
What I like about this console in a studio like yours too is that if you know your way around a Mackie, you can find your way around this console. Where, you know, some of the other SSL consoles, there's like menu diving to do with the recall of the automation.
Well, they call it a dumb console.
Yeah.
I'm a total dumbass, and it works great. This is like a mix. I mean, this is a mixer. It's like you said, like, I mean, I had a Mackie 32. Before I had my first Neotech, I couldn't afford anything else. I got a Mackie 32. It's amazing. It just, you know, it does what it's supposed to do. Every channel you go, oh, there's the preamp, there's the send, there, you know, there's some routing, like the buses, there's some like smart technology in there you kind of got to get used to. But like, I would say 90% of this console is right in front of you and you know exactly what it does.
Yeah. The big three, the SSL, API, Neve, you can really accommodate a tracking session, basic tracks, where you get that entire sound for the whole basic tracks, all the rhythm.
Yeah, I mean, that was when we redid this, it was like, I want all the flavors.
Yeah.
We're at a time in recording history that you can do it. Like, you know, we're not gonna have an SSL, a Neve, and an API all in the control room. Although I've seen studios that have done that recently. They're huge, I don't know where they are. Or they're, you know, they're probably like in a barn in Nebraska or something. But like, you know, in LA, where price of real estate's insane and like, you know, you gotta fit a lot of stuff in not huge spaces sometimes. This board, size-wise, is perfect. You know, at one time, I think I told you, we measured the room for Dennis Herring's console.
Oh yeah. Who
has one of our producer rooms. And he was like, hey, I can move the console in here. We literally measured it and it wouldn't fit.
Oh, wow.
We're like, well, we can shave off the producer desk. And like, then we realized, oh, all the output 1272s are like in the producer desk. It's like, oh man, let's go like, oh, okay, maybe not, you know. So, I mean, the size of this console is perfect for the modern project studio. And the fact that, you know, yeah, like you said, we have the different flavors. And that was huge for me. is being able to tick all the boxes for people coming in, right? And wanting like, well, you know, we're going really Ringo-y, Beatles, Abbey Road style on this tracking session. So we even have like 4 TG channels. You know, I'm like, oh, you want the EMI sound? Use those TG channels. 4 channels. That's pretty much what they were probably using in the early days. You know, you know, if you're not recording the whole band, but you're gonna overdub like a Ringo, Ludwig kit, like it's 4 mics. There you go.
Yeah.
Do it. You know. So I think it was really important to have flexibility. It was really important with this room, and the way modern sessions, what you need for a modern session. Even having an analog tape machine and Pro Tools, and just having all the options in front.
Yeah, the analog tape machine is rather new. It's a Mara machine.
Yeah, so for years I've been talking to Chris Mara about trading in my original JH24, which was from Seagrape, that did all the house records and death metal. And I was like, you know, can you just take my machine and fix this one up? Because it had a lot of sentimental value. And he was just like, well, other than like the chassis, it's going to be a brand new machine. So why don't you just send me that one and I'll send you one of my brand new ones. So that's what we did. And I have to say, it's amazing. I think when we just started this whole project, I was like, look, I do not want calls at 10 o'clock at night because a major piece of gear is failing.
Yeah.
Right? And as a commercial studio owner, that is like the dreaded 10 o'clock, midnight. We're finishing the sessions, we're printing everything, and channel 13 on the console just like pooped out, you know? And it's like, that's the dreaded call.
Yeah.
And I mean, think if it's your own personal studio and you're willing to deal with the toothpicks and the, you know, blowing the cobwebs out here and there, that's fine. But like for us, the driving factor was everything needs to work and tech bills need to come down.
Yeah.
And I feel we've achieved it. We're going on a little over a year now with the new setup, and I have to honestly say, I think our tech bills are about $500, and it's for a few like little intermittent things on some older pieces of gear.
Yeah.
So, you know, like we replaced it with a lot of new stuff, even like the Spectre Sonics.
Then there's also sort of like the missed opportunity cost too. Like if something is down, you have to cancel a session or postpone it or comp them a day or a half day or whatever, right? There's
Rana like hates that.
Yeah.
She's like, her job is booking the studio, and when there's a problem and people want money back or people want to rebook, you know, like pick up a day because they lost a day, it's painful as a business owner, you know? It's like, you know, of course we have to do it, you know? Of course we have to be on the side of our client, right? But that's costly over time, you know? I feel like right now, this incarnation of the studio is super smooth, super minimal issues, if any.
So let's talk a little bit kind of through the gear that you curated and brought together here. Let's just start on this side of the rack with the TubeTech CL1B. How many CL1Bs do you have between all your studios?
I've had that since the mid-90s, that one. You know, and when it first came out, it was like, I loved it. You know, I bought it because it was just a more tweakable LA2A to me, you know?
Yeah.
I think the first time I even heard it was at like Sunset or Capitol session I did in the 90s. But the CL1B, I would say, has become a modern classic, especially probably in the last 10 years. It seems like the chain that we get most requested is a 1073 CL1B and some kind of tube mic, whether it be a 4767, and a lot of times the Sony 800, you know, especially in the modern pop world. I pretty much want a 1073 and a CL1B in every room. Between all our rooms, probably like 8 or 9 CL1Bs.
Yeah.
Floating around different rooms.
It's just a must-have for modern pop vocals.
Yeah, and for a second there, I don't know, this might, you can tell me, but it was unobtainium.
Yeah, no, there's still a many-year waiting list for a new one.
Yeah.
So the used ones are selling for more than they go for new. Is it that unique? Is it that special on vocal? Is there anything else that you've been able to like replicate? I know a lot of people want the confidence of like the famous model number. They don't have to second guess it, but
my job is not to question.
Yeah.
My job is to provide.
Yeah.
Personally, it's cool. I like it. Is it the end all be all? No. I think it's amazing. I think, obviously there's a reason it's the go-to chain. Like the distressor, for example.
Yeah.
That compressor does so much more than a CL1B.
What do you like to use the distressor on?
I use it on everything.
Yeah.
You can run in opto mode, or you can crush, or you can get crazy with the attack and release. I have like my 160Xs down here that I started out. I've had those probably since like 1989, So, I would say the distressor became the 160X in my world, right? Because it just does it. It kind of does everything. The 160X, does its thing. The distressor can do that and so much more, right?
So if you were going to have one outboard compressor, would it be the distressor?
I think it might be.
Yeah.
Sonically, it does do a thing. It rolls. The CL1B is definitely more hi-fi.
Yeah, I think what people like about the CL1B on vocals is that you can do a lot of compression without the compression artifacts.
Right.
Which was a lot of what you could get out of those inward connections. Yeah.
That's the thing, man. It took me a second to get used to the inwards because, yeah, exactly. You can't hear it. It's just the vocals like that. A lot of times, like the Spectra Sonic is like that too.
Yeah.
It's very grabby.
The Spectra, it's the fastest analog compressor that's made.
Okay.
There's now Hum Audio's doing this analog look-ahead compressor.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw that.
Yeah, so maybe they might have Spectra built, but until the Hum Audio came out, the Spectra was the fastest, and yeah, it's really great at just like grabbing a hold of attack transients and holding things in place. And
we have a lot of compressors.
yeah. So you do have a lot of compressors. The traditional SSL console would have dynamics on the console.
Right. And we ended up getting 4 channels of B dynamic, which is the classic 4000 first issue.
Yeah.
What Clear Mountain and those early SSL mixer guys kind of made famous, And in fact, the other day, we were using the plate, staying alive through here, and we were running the plate. And, or I can't remember what it was. It was some analog piece. It might have been the BX20 or something. And it was actually, there was there was a little bit of operation noise going on just from the unit. But the gate came in real handy. Okay. In fact, they're still on right now.
The same setting.
That was the great thing with this console is the fact that you can put 500 series in the center.
Yeah.
And we opted to put some of the original dynamics because we have plenty of outboard dynamics. I haven't counted, but I think we're close to at least 24 channels of dynamics in here. I don't know. And then getting the AMSs, we got two AMSs. So we have the plate reverb, the BX20, and then the 2 AMS 500 series normaled.
Yeah.
To the 4 augs.
Yeah. What you mentioned before, you said, just running through the Mercury 666.
Right.
It has a tone. People are using dynamics to paint all these different tones and colors together, right? And when you have the SSL, like a classic SSL where there's dynamics in every channel, if they were going to do that on this console, it would raise the price of the console. It would double the price if they had to put all the extra infrastructure and all those circuits. Now you get to paint with the colors that you have. You get a wider variety.
As much as I love the dynamics on the SSL, running that channel, running through all that stuff is kind of the sound of those early consoles, right? Where I feel like not having the dynamic in the circuit, it's a little more open, it's a little more hi-fi.
Okay.
It's simpler too. And let's face it, the old SSL sound, like the kick snare, maybe there's certain things you use that on that get that classic swap sound that they're known for. But then I've owned 4 Neotechs in my career. And Neotechs are amazing workhorses. They have no sound.
Yeah.
They're super, super transparent. EQ's really cool. It's its own thing, really sculpty. But I found when I had Neotechs, I was always running through compressors. Whether I used the compressor or not, I needed to add that circuit to give the tone I was looking for. And then when we got the 8068, I didn't need it. It already had the sound. So I was using less and less compressors with the Neve. Compressors in the sense of just trying to get a tone, right? But now, even with the outboard stuff, I feel especially with SSL, which is really hi-fi, running it through the Mercury is insane. Like I said, every chain on overdub that I do in this room, I go through the Mercuries, whether I'm using it or not.
whether you're compressing or not.
No, yeah. And in fact, I mean, I might tickle it a little bit, but it's not being used as a compressor in the traditional sense. We're just hitting the circuit, right? I feel like every piece of gear in this rack has a sound, right?
Yeah.
And you can use it as part of your colors, you know, your paint brushes and whatnot.
So speaking of boxes with sound,
Yeah.
the Q2 reissue of the Compex F760.
Yeah.
So that was a compressor, originally was seen in the Helios consoles. That same 760 compressor, you would see it like that's the sound of like the levee brakes.
Yeah, yeah.
In the Stone's mobile unit. Those compressors were developed by the same people at the same time. Compex kind of took their thing, Helios did their thing, but very similar. They're now being reissued by a guy in Michigan, Tim Mead. Tim had experience restoring and servicing the vintage Compex.
Yeah.
And was working directly with the original manufacturers in England. And after years of them going back and forth, they realized that they had all the parts they needed to put it back in service without compromise.
Right.
It really, like, all the parts were still available.
Right.
And over the years of servicing and rebuilding them, they had what they needed. It really is a historical replica of that sound. What have you
And
been
it works.
Yeah, and it works.
And it works. I mean, I have
And
so
it's-
many friends that are just obsessed with that compressor and have like 4 or 5 of them, you know, simply because they need one working, you know.
Of the vintage, yeah.
Or, you know, they're notoriously, you know, hard to like you know. But I mean, that was part of the rule, right, Jeff? I said, whatever we get for this room needs to be, you know, the greatest hits, but it needs to work. And I think that's a classic example of the decisions we made going with the new one. And it's been great. Totally lives on the room mics, you know. Like we have that plate room. What's our mic locker / plate room? It's around the corner from where the drums are. And we'll put a mic in there, and that's like the down the hall mic.
Okay.
You know, and going through that, you cannot deny the sound.
Yeah.
You know?
You just crush it or...
Yeah. I mean, I'm just running through and effing around with it until it's like, yeah, it's cool. Like I just remember my son Jasper, who's a young engineer now, and him like just in there playing around with it and going, I don't know what this is doing, but I like, you know, it's like, you know, it's definitely one of those like, wow, there's a lot of stuff on this, you know. So where then you got the leveler, which will do that too. It's just the 2 knobs though, you know.
When I used to mix, I had the 500 levelers.
Yeah.
And I had a pair that I would use to crush, but then I got a third one just to use for an overdrive.
Yeah.
It's killer on a bass or a synth or a vocal if you want like a edgy distorted vocal.
Yeah.
And local, they're Ian is right in Echo Park.
Yeah,
so like
Standard
right,
Audio.
Yeah, right down the street.
Yeah, and this is their newest, like full blown, the Mark II dual leveler. I mean, I have the 500 as well.
I think you got one of the first ones, right?
I think I did.
Yeah. Very cool.
I know I ordered it before it was available, so I'm assuming it's one of the first ones.
You've got some 1176s, some LA4As. There's a total of 6 channels of DBX 160 VU between your vintage ones, your 160Xs that you've had since the 80s, and then the Audioscape 260s.
Yep.
Yeah, they do a really good job. They actually have new old stock parts and VCAs that they're using in those, so they're...
No, I really love the 260. I really love the 1178 reissue.
Oh, yeah.
The first time I used an 1178 was at Butch Vig's studio when he had his Smart Studios in Madison. I just fell in love with that thing. But I've never been able to find one like that was available and within like the time I was ready to buy something, you know? So the fact that Audioscape has that, and Chris is like, hey man, let me send it over to you, check it out. You know, I'm like, okay, let's do it. You know, so I'm really impressed with Audioscape and what they're able to do and bring, you know, affordability for what, you know, I mean, pretty much everything they do is the greatest hits.
Yeah.
Right? So like they're doing just an affordable version of all the greatest hits.
Yeah. Made in Florida with as many new old stock parts as possible. Like really, really solid.
Yeah, really cool company.
Big fans of what they do. And you've got the Audioscape Spring Reverb.
Yep, the 305, which is like kind of modeling the master room.
Okay.
We have a 515 master room as well. You know, it's older and huge tank and everything. That thing fits in two rack spaces like it's ready to roll.
Yeah.
You know?
Now you've got great outboard effects between the Audioscape, the BX20, the Echo Plate 2, You got 2 AMS reverbs in the console.
Yeah, and we have a whole bunch of Lexicon stuff we're getting serviced right now.
Oh, nice.
So I think right above that rack over there, we're gonna add a effects rack on top, which is gonna be like it's PCM 60, SRV 2000 Roland, which is a killer like gated reverbs and stuff. Gonna get a Lexicon 300, and then I got like some real goofy stuff like the 80s like ART like guitar processors, and even like an SPX 90, the vintage digital.
Yeah. Brendan O'Brien's secret. Yeah. Dave, I'd like to take an opportunity. I hope I've said thank you many times over the years. You know, you've been really, really supportive of me and my businesses. And I try to refer to you and everybody I work with as a client more than a customer.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've had that kind of relationship. Like,
Absolutely.
You know, where we work together, and I've really tried to do everything that's in your best interest, you know, to be there as a resource for you. And you're busy making records, you're running the studio. Like when you give me a task, there's a way I can help you behind the scenes. I think I've earned your trust after like 25 years, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just, you know, I'm really grateful that you have given me that trust and that we've been able to work together. And even like when we were talking about putting the console in it, we were talking almost every day for like months, you know?
Yeah.
And it was a process that you had to go through.
Yeah, I mean, there's been several. We've been through several processes over the years, and you know, it kind of goes back to that 5-year rule. Like every 5 years, I'm kind of retooling. There's the different things we need to shift and do, and you know, obviously, this recent remodel was a huge one, and a lot of moving parts, which you were there with me, helping me, guiding me, and answering a lot of questions. And to be honest, I didn't even know about the SSL Origin when you brought it up to me, because we were looking at all the different options. After speaking with Rana, you know, she made it very clear, like we needed to pick either SSL, Neve, or API, because that's what on people's tips of their tongues when they talk about a board, you know.
So I was really concerned, you know, leaving, saying goodbye to the Neve that we've had so many years. And I think like the engineers are so happy. It's easy to work, and it's very versatile, and the engineers at our studio like it even better than the Neve because they also have the sidecards of the Neve, API and SSL. So we cover all the bases, and I think it's actually sounding amazing, and they like it better. So I'm thrilled, they're thrilled, and people that are coming in are thrilled. So I'm really happy with it.
I have a good relationship with API via you. We did the Gold Diggers, we did the first 2448 together. And of course, R&D, love those guys, and AMS, you know, they just put out like the BCM 10. So there was a lot of choices, like where we were gonna go next. And you're like, hey man, have you thought about SSL? And I was like, well, you know, power supplies, all the typical things that come up when you think about SSL, like, oh, it's a really big console, the footprint, power supplies, all that stuff. And you're like, no, they have a new console that's like really giving more budget-minded APIs and Neves a run for the money. And you introduced me to it. So I'm pretty geeky. I go on the forums, I look at stuff, but for some reason, the Origin completely slipped by me. Even though I walked past it at AES when it first came out, you know, I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, I don't know, it just didn't resonate. But you brought the Origin to my attention, and that's a classic example of how we work together. Switching from the Neve to the new setup, you kind of talked me off the ledge a couple times on certain things. It's a scary thing, you know, like especially being an audio people, to like, you know, make that decision was a huge decision. You helped me with it. I knew you were totally hardcore the first time I met you, when you showed up in your Subaru hatchback, and you open up the hatch and you had like, I think you had like a 609, a bunch of inwards, you had like all this kick-ass gear, and it's like right when you hit town, early days, and you were like the West Coast guy, you know, before it was anything where we are now, right? And so like I just knew right from the get-go, I'm like, oh, I like this guy. I'm gonna buy gear from this guy. He shows up with a hatchback full of gear and brings it right into my studio. I mean, that's the one thing you don't get when you go to the big box stores, right? You know, you literally showed up with a car full of gear, brought it in, said, hey, try this out, you know, literally put it on the island and left it with me. you're like, yeah, give it a shot. Let me know what you think, you know? And at least this is now going back, I've been doing this 25 years here. It's pretty shortly after I built the studio. Back then, that was kind of unheard of.
Yeah.
Gear to table.
Yeah. Well, we still do that.
I know. So that kind of won me right from the get-go. It's like the personalized curation, you know, hey, I'm going to bring over some stuff for you to check out. So that's been a great part of the relationship.
Yeah, I mean, that we still offer that service of in-studio demos, and you know, we sell gear for a living, but when you bring great stuff into a studio and let people try it out, you don't have to sell it. You know, people pick and choose.
Classic example.
Yeah.
The other day, the KSD speakers.
Oh, the KSD speakers, yeah.
You can tell the story, but like, how long did it take me to decide I want those speakers?
10 seconds. It was the fastest speaker demo I've ever done.
Well, I heard them in here.
Yeah.
I heard them over at the shop. I heard them at a few different studios around town you did some showcases with.
Yeah.
And so I knew they were good, but I was like, I need to hear them in my room. And I have like a reel of songs I play, and I think I played one of the songs that that's kind of like where I go to test the speaker right away. About 10 seconds into the song when it's dropping, and when the big drops are happening, I'm like, no subwoofer, I'm hearing everything and more.
Yeah.
I want these.
Yeah.
So, but that wouldn't have happened, like that decision wouldn't have been made as easily if I had to go online and just rely on, you know, that side. So that's always been a plus. Not saying that you can't just go online and buy stuff, and I'm sure you guys accommodate people very well on that side, but that's been a huge part for me, is the personalized help like that.
If anybody would like to learn more about Kingsize Soundlabs, kingsizesoundlabs.com. Give them a follow up.
I love it. We've been here almost 25 years. I hope to be here for another 25.
Well, it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, man.
Really grateful for you.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you.
And I look forward to seeing what we do over the next 25 years.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, at least the next 10, 15. I think I'm going to be on a sailboat cruising the world in about 15 years. So.